My name is David. I'm one of the FX editors here at Finance Magnates, and for the last session of the day we have a very interesting panel on what makes an FX All-Star. Moderating it will be Gregory Armand-Jones, who's not exactly supposed to be here, but he can explain why he is. Gregory has helped a lot in the past with our events and has kindly set up this panel, so I'll hand over to him.
Thank you very much. I'm not meant to be here only because I've been a headhunter for about 15 years and officially on gardening leave. So do not put this onto LinkedIn right now. Okay, you can put them on LinkedIn later. I specialize within foreign exchange and have been placing traders on the buy and sell side. I'll let my guests introduce themselves. I've got Felix Adams and Richard Longmore, who I've known both for over 10 years. And so, Richard, would you like to tell the group, the small group? I think everyone's in the pub right now, aren't they? I mean, 4 o'clock, it's the kind of the graveyard shift. But thank you very much to the people that have come here. Richard, would you like to tell everyone your background?
Yeah, hi. I was in the financial markets for, 29 years, and then decided that it would be a good idea to set up my own firm, which I did with my partner, Sandeep Varma, a couple of years ago, or 18 months ago, which is consultancy, and basically it's aimed at the fact that regulation and cost constraints have basically meant that senior management's time is at a huge premium, with net result of which a lot of things get left in the dust, and we're here to help that out.
Felix.
My name is Felix Adam. I'm from Switzerland, from Zurich. My background is a little bit different than Richard's, because he's now having his own firm. I used to have for 25 years my own firm. It was ACD Currency Partners in Zurich. Then I moved the company into Swiss private banks, and the reason for it was also compliance and the regulatory, because we had to spend so much time and money to do that in the end. And then even instead of increasing the customer base, we lost some of the key investors because of the balance sheet. That's why we had to move into a bank. These days now, I'm doing with my partner pushing currency awareness. We have the vision that in banks it's one piece missing, and that is awareness. That means content on the FX market. So that's what we are going to do again in the next time.
Thank you. Look, big and small group, rather than kind of do, I think in a situation like this, if anyone's got any questions or anyone is interested in a particular area or anyone wants a challenge of you, it's an interesting topic, what makes an FX All-Star. I think we all kind of thought to ourselves, what does that mean, or how would we translate that? I suppose one focus is going to be what makes people the top FX traders, and this is very much an institutional focus rather than retail focus. So, Richard, what makes an FX All-Star in your opinion?
So, when I had a look at this one, apart from, sort of racking my brains, I basically thought of the transient nature of the answer to that question. So what makes an FX All-Star? So in the 80s, it would have been one thing, largely an ability to be able to drink until you fell over. In the 90s, the noughties, the teens, it's a different thing. And as you basically go into the 20s and the 30s, there's going to be a huge evolution. And I really believe that banks need to think very long and hard, and the buy side as well, about the nature of the people that they employ. Because I could have answered the question in one word, because it doesn't matter whether it was the 80s, 90s, noughties, 10s, 20s, whatever. I could have said charisma, but I could have said charisma for pretty much anything. So if you drill down, the answer to the question is, it depends. And I'm reminded the Ronald Reagan quote, which is, give me a one-handed economist. So I'm going to try and be succinct. And the answer to which is, as the customer needs change, then in which case, what makes an FX All-Star change? FX All-Star is going to change. And it will be dictated, as everything is, by what the clients need. We can go into what that means, but essentially that's the answer.
Felix, how do you kind of...
The definition, what is an FX All-Star? And I was looking in the dictionary, in the dictionary, and they said it is somebody who is steady outperforming. As we came from the old world, the outperformance was, I wouldn't say just drinking, key was to make money. And if you have made money, we were the kings and the greatest. It doesn't really matter if you have just taken away the money from the clients. It was not money which we have produced by brain. So it was also, it depended on, you make a lot of money, but you're just sitting at the right table where you have the right clients to make the money and you were the star. It was completely the wrong thing to develop yourself, to get to the point where you said that you have to adapt and to learn. We have not learned. Even our head of FX, he said, you know, we're just going to sell dollars. And he said that for 2 years. So we had you could have switched off the brain and just did what he said. And that is completely wrong for somebody who is 25 years old and has to learn about the market and has to get further up to the next level. So in my view, it is key that you leave the comfort zone. And if you want to get an all-star, it doesn't mean that you are the biggest and highest performer. It means that you're a steady performer, that you always, whatever changes in the market, you always find a way to perform for your employee, but also important, what we forget in these days, for your clients. Otherwise, you're running out of clients and you have no job anymore.
I think it's one of those things where when a lot of heads of, let's say, fixed income or people who are running the banks, and they go, okay, who's your best trader? It used to be who's making the most money, okay, or who's taking the most risk. But you could have a guy at a European bank running the Euro book that is probably just printing money. It might have the biggest P&L, but it's actually not making the most proprietary risk. Now, proprietary risk is another thing. Do you benchmark? How would you, from a sales background, rate someone as an all-star versus at trading? How would you also pin it down? What are the difference and what are the similarities between the two?
So actually, I'm going to take the trading question, because as a sales manager, a good trader is absolutely essential to your offering. And at the last institution which I worked at, I was fortunate enough to work with a relatively young man, on the basis that I'm very old, that is just incredible. And he's incredible because his understanding of risk dynamics is unsurpassed. His willingness to stand up when the world comes to an end, bearing in mind that, I'm thinking about the S&B event. And this is a guy that stands up and just calms down the entire trading wing. Doesn't matter whether it was the forward traders, the options traders, it doesn't matter. He calmed them down. On top of that, he's articulate and he is customer friendly. And that doesn't matter whether it's the best price, but over the long term, it is an ability to be able to interface with the client. What makes a sales all-star is changing. Now, I would argue that a good salesperson has the ability to be able to take that brilliant trader to the customer. He should, or she should, understand what their offering is. And in this particular case, one of the big offerings of the bank was this individual head of trading. I also argue that an all-star in the current environment and going forward, so we're going to leave the 80s and 90s behind as a bad memory, although the music was good, and we're going to say, okay, what does that look like? And I would argue very strongly that what that looks like is an ability to be able to deliver the bank. The value added is no longer a question of what's going on in the market, what the best research is, whatever. It's the ability to be able to marshal the bank's resources. And in a very crude sense, what that actually means now is about making sure that the documentation is done, that the onboarding is done, whatever administrative functions that just make the client's life easier. And that means the skill set is changing. And I would argue that currently banks are massively badly set up. And the reason they're badly set up is that they continue to look at the Russell Group, engineers, economists, mathematicians. Actually, you know what, from a sales perspective, no longer necessary. But they continue to look and fish in the wrong pool.
Felix.
Oof, I cannot, Richard. I was on the buy side for 25 years, and I've seen the head of sales coming to us and say, look, now these two guys left us. We have two new, sales who are recovering your line. Is that an issue for you? And it was a very famous bank. And I said, guys, you guys, this bank is around for so long, and I assume that you are able to find people who are replacing the two guys. If I liked them or not, if I thought that was the right decision they took, that is not the question. If I work with the bank's relation, if it's Goldman, if it's Citi, if it's JP Morgan, we work with them because they have an offering we like. They have a pricing we like. They have the counterparty side. They have products we need. And the one who is connecting to us, we just expect that the company is able to find people who can do that. And honestly, they always did. And we have some people we liked, we had some people we didn't like. We didn't give more business. Maybe somebody who was more sympathetic. Maybe you helped a little bit more, you gave a little bit more. But in general, it just has to deliver the products of the bank.
Is increased
Okay, and then when we go back now to the company, when you have a currency fund where you have to make money out of it, and you have to recruit a talent in the market, this is extremely difficult. Out of Zurich, you don't have that many. Let's say
not if you have a good headhunter.
Okay, we have good headhunters.
Does anybody
too.
know a good headhunter?
No, but the industry of having ethics guys who are taking huge risks and are used to take risks. I'm not talking about running a book somewhere. Taking bets is another quality than being in a bank and running a book. And that's the first risk. On the other hand, you're having the guys who are really good and can make money. You are in competition with all the big hedge funds. So do you think a small boutique firm out of Switzerland and Zurich has the chance to get the best talent?
Yes.
Okay. You maybe. You are better because you know, Greg, you will have hired the right headhunter. But I'm just saying it was a very difficult game to play. And you have sometimes to take the second best solution and you have to make the best out of it.
Does regulation and the increased regulation now make it a lot harder for someone to stand out from the crowd?
So I think the answer to which is no, but it means it's a fundamentally different job. So personally speaking, were I still running global sales, then in which case the nature of the people that I would look for is very different. I would probably be looking for a language base. I'd probably be looking for legal experience, so the ability to be able to do some of the initial legwork around onboarding or changing in documentation, and to be able to really facilitate the task of onboarding and managing that client. So I think that the ability to be able to be an all-star doesn't change. What they deliver fundamentally is very different and is going to be very different.
Same.
But that makes that's why I'm coming to the point. The all-star is able to adapt even to these changes. If the S&B is depegging, as somebody is able to handle this stress and take the right decision. If the compliance takes over, regulatory staff takes over, and is a new priority, he's able to adapt.
So,
I mean, to learn and to adapt to different situations. That's the key. And I do believe that is also a key talent you need to have in the coming future. Whatever comes with the transition of cryptocurrencies, blockchain technology, whatever comes, you must be able to adapt. If you're not adapting, then you're an old school FX trader who was just doing what the boss said. He went out with always the same friends to drink, and he didn't learn. And all these, my friends from the early days, they were all out when they were 35 or 40 years. There were no jobs left for them because they have not adapted.
Yeah.
And I think this is something which remains. And we don't talk about ethics, we talk about all industries.
Can I, we've got about 10 minutes, so I want to kind of throw some questions to the crowd, but at the same time, does a leading FX all-star, and let's say, okay, trader rather than salesperson at this stage, how seriously do they look at or have an eye on cryptocurrency? Because there's a lot of people who do cryptocurrency. Does an FX trader take it seriously, or do they kind of go, it's a fad? And there's a lot of people who've been having this fad have made a lot of money.
So to come back to the question about what makes an all-star, and currently, what makes an all-star is not necessarily what it's going to be in a year or 5 years' time. It's adaptability. And the reality is that salespeople require guidance, they require training, they require mentoring. And where I think that we have a significant issue is the fact that regulation, on one hand, and the imperative to cut costs on the other, has meant that management time is so stretched, it's ridiculous. When I left the market to set up my consultancy firm, I spent most of my time worrying about how I could avoid going to jail because somebody had done something stupid 5 levels below me.
So are you more worried about jail than you are about cryptocurrency?
No, but because, again, it's a question of change.
Yep.
So to come back to the question, beg your pardon,
Sorry.
change happens. Cryptocurrency is change. But the reality is that as a salesperson, if you are looking at cryptocurrency, actually you've got to drill down and see what that's about. And to my mind, it's a really, really simple binary question. Cryptocurrency is about regulation. Either the regulators accept it, in which case it's going to go ballistic, or they're going to ban it. And if you cannot use cryptocurrency to buy an Audi, a washing machine, whatever else, in the long run, it's doomed.
Felix.
Okay.
Hang on. Goldman's were going to do a crypto desk and then kind of pulled it. So what's your view?
Now, your question was a hedge fund guy and buying cryptocurrencies.
Yes.
Okay. We were in the process of thinking of in the early stage to buy for our fund cryptocurrencies as a base and said, look, we do not know what's going to happen, but maybe that goes down to zero, but maybe it goes up, as the people say, and it's going to be 1,000 times more value. So we said, why not taking some position and just put it in the fund somewhere in storage? We surely find a way. We asked the directors, we asked the regulators, we were not allowed to do it. And now I make the bridge to the hedge fund guy. If you're employed with one of the biggest hedge funds, and they say, the guy comes, the trader, the portfolio manager, I want to buy these cryptocurrencies. Then the question is always, what is written in docs? I'm allowed to do it or not? Is it in the policy of the firm to do it? And if there is a no, then there is a no. I mean, you cannot go, if the owner says no, and you say, I don't give a shit, I just buy it, because it goes up anywhere. And now what makes an all-star is, but if you have made it without asking it, and in the end you make a bunch of money, you maybe could be, you violated the rules, but maybe you could be an all-star, because you have made bloody a lot of money, and you made the people rich, and then they look away and say it's okay. I think cryptocurrencies is a new world, and I think you have to put it somehow beside. But we from the old world have to understand and learn and to adapt and see how we can use that as another instrument Not the instrument, not the product.
Again, it requires flexibility, it requires the ability to be able to understand, learn and change. So, you know, in terms of sales, the way in which I would hope an all-star would behave is to actually understand what drives that particular market. Now, I see a very high correlation between movements in cryptocurrency and regulatory announcements. So, you know, you get Japan says, yeah, it's good, and China says, no, it's bad, and it goes up and goes down. Okay, in which case, an all-star, a sales all-star, is going to have a view about the way in which regulatory change is going to evolve, and therefore what might happen to cryptocurrency. So again, it comes back to a very simple thing. Salespeople need to adapt, change, evolve.
You've come here today from France, you've come from Switzerland. It seems that a lot of banks are sending their sales desks, or a lot of salespeople are being told they might be going to different centres. I won't mention any names, but there's some that are going to Paris, there's loads that are going to Frankfurt. What's your view? And is it too soon? I mean, we don't really know what Brexit looks like yet. What's going to happen on that front?
So I think
you run. Let's say you're back at a bank and you run global sales. What would you do? Would you move? Would you keep people in London, or would you hedge it? Because some people, one bank has moved everyone to Paris. Okay.
Okay. In which case, let me just throw a question to the audience, which is, what is the population of London, according to Wikipedia?
10. You said 10. I'm saying 8. It's 8 million.
It's 8.5. Okay, great. So what is the population of the nearest European city, which is Berlin?
3 million?
3.5. So the big thing about London, which I think that people, certainly on the continent, and you know, a lot of my friends in Paris fail to grasp, is that, and also this is framed against the fact that I spent an awful lot of time in Zurich. I spent about 40% of my time in Zurich. And UBS certainly had the experience of moving traders and sales to Switzerland. One of the fundamental things which I believe regulators, governments, whatever, newspapers are failing to understand is that the big advantage that London has is infrastructure. Don't laugh. Yes, I know it took me an hour to get from A to B and all the rest of it. But the reality is with a population of 8.5 million people, it has such a gamut of talent that it is a nexus. Also, most importantly, it has legal system, it has the capacity to be able to deal with an influx, which, for instance, Zurich was completely incapable. In just the simple example of one bank, they couldn't actually handle the request for schooling. Guess what?
Felix.
It's a problem.
No, honestly, I do. You're absolutely right. I'm from Zurich. I was born there. I've grown up there. My kids, my grandchildren, they're all there.
You got grandchildren?
I do. I mean, is that the top? Is that a question I have to answer? So, I mean, we were missing in Switzerland some talents. Geneva has an issue. In Geneva, you can't find any FX sales in a certain level. They only have the old school stuff because there is no. I mean, the
Unless you
community
use
is
a good
too
headhunter.
small. Okay, headhunter.
Do you know a
is
good
over.
hunter?
Is a good headhunter a good FX sales? Did I?
No.
And in Zurich, it's maybe in Zurich you have more internationality. You have more stuff. You have much higher delta to find good people. But if you compare to London, you have. I mean, it's probably 50 times less of talents than you have in the UK. In UK, you will find everything. And what I think what makes UK strong, you have to say, is not only the English people, and it's not the language, it's all the foreigners who are working here. And I'm nothing against the English people at all, but in Switzerland, if you would still have only the Swiss guy, the guys from Zurich there, I tell you, we would be far behind the curve. We need the Germans in Switzerland, we need the English guys, we need the Americans. They really brought us up to a higher level. And you can see that, and I like to have the comparison to football, and it's a similar thing to football. You need to have foreigners in the team because they bring the team to a different level.
I think as someone who looks and obviously moves people, there is a real concern of people who don't want to necessarily go to Paris or Frankfurt. I mean, one of the big concerns, and I don't know if it's a rumor mill or people scaremongering, but two of the large German banks have already reserved all the private schools in Frankfurt. And again, I think that is so anyone else who's trying to follow that curve, they're going to get blocked because if you say to your partner, right, we've got to move to Frankfurt, we've got to take the kids out of the school, and there, your partner might say
No.
Okay, look, we've got about 4 minutes, so if anyone's got any interesting questions whilst you've got this pool of talent of FX stars on the stage, I'll remove myself from that group. Let us know. If not, I've got one more. So does anyone have any questions? Well, go on.
So I'm surprised about if nowadays, if you ask a bank what FX All-Star would be, they would say someone who can build algos, someone who can build an AI. While you just talked about crypto and the voice, I think nowadays that's very much an all-star. And again, talking about talent, I think if I was talking about talent in Madrid, it would be the IT person, the FX person who can understand the platform which I want to market to the rest of the world. I think that's really what they're missing now. They're trying to move people, not necessarily the salesperson, which everyone can do nowadays. It's really IT are critical.
So I think that comes to the point about adaptability, flexibility. I think you're right, and I think that it depends. What makes an FX all-star of yesterday versus 10 years' time kind of depends about the evolution. If you ask me, do I think that the FX all-star of today is still going to be employed in 10 years' time? The answer to which is it depends on how clever that bank is. But can they retrain them? Because they've got a wealth of experience, but not necessarily what the client wants going forward. So it might be IT, it might be legal, it might be crypto, it might be, God knows, AI.
But you're right. In the old days, it was just a very simple profile. Old school, charismatic, having big balls. That was the characteristic of a good, successful.
You're being gender
all-star.
specific there.
But in these days, you're having IT, you're having compliance involving, you're having introverted math guys who are very strong in derivatives. You having the characteristic, charismatic guy who make a presentation and motivates the people.
Yeah, but going forward, that skill set.
No, wait. You have much more different type of people in a team. You have it not having one profile. You're having 10 or 12 different profiles.
But also that's where you were previously working, whereas most people would have a head of FX that would just be the biggest or most profitable trader, or some banks it might be the top salesperson. The person that was running your FX business, had a kind of an algo and E background, right? So you've kind of you're kind of ahead of the curve on that one. We got one more, 2 questions. Go. You have one question. He had another question as well. So hit me with one.
Okay, so the first point is what makes an FX all-star, be it a trader or sales, is the ability to be able to adapt. Part of that is the ability to be able to network and interface with the people in the bank. So in short, yeah, they need to be able to deliver the bank, which means that they need to be able to get the best out of their support that they can. And that may be the back office, it might be legal, it might be documented, doesn't matter. So they need that ability to be able to network. So charisma remains a central issue. The second question is an interesting one, which is with regards to ethics. So who watched Friends in the when was it 90s? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. But yeah. So my other half was watching Netflix, was watching Friends the other day, and I absolutely cringed because some of the jokes are so inappropriate. Guess what? Society changes. So the big issue that I have at the moment, particularly with regards to regulation, is that regulators have a look-back option. They have the ability over a 14-year period for most banks to be able to say, what you did 14 years ago by current standards is unethical. I think that's a problem. And I also believe that's one of the fundamental reasons that the banks are going to have to evolve and change in the way in which they deal with their staff. Ethics change. I can't tell you what will make an ethical trader in 10 years' time. But the general yardstick which I operate is, would you be happy if your grandmother found out that you were doing it? Because personally speaking, it's just kind of yardstick.
Last question, and then we'll wrap up. There's a gentleman there who had a question. Fire one to Felix. You, sir, you had your hand up earlier. You're hiding now. You're now looking behind you. You had your hand up. You definitely had your hand up. This gentleman has one here. Felix, you start.
If for a crypto trader,
yeah, where would you find a crypto trader?
I tell you one thing. I tell you, you ask me something, I have a serious problem, because a crypto trader is, if he wants to manage a fund, he's probably just buying cryptocurrencies, and he's not doing anything. If they go up, he's the hero, and if it goes down, he's not. But he has nothing else he could do because he cannot go short. You know, so. I think the requirement I have to this guy, he needs to have, I don't know, basic understanding of financial stuff. If he knows some brokers is okay, and then he, you know, to figure out which platform he can do with an easy thing. I could probably say, Greg, bring me young talent, which has more talents, and maybe he will adapt sooner or later to go to the next level. But
to wrap it up very quickly, interesting question. There are hedge funds that are macro-focused hedge funds, big names that have made more money in cryptocurrency than they have on their macro book, without mentioning any names. To find a good crypto trader, we don't really have stats on kind of let's say the last 3 years. The most profitable people have been people in their bedroom, okay, who bought it very early on. I was having coffee with a guy who trades crypto, has made £2 million in the last 6 months. Just because his friend recommended buy this. And how do you make that decision? Well, that's just a recommendation. I think we still need to assess. It's a really difficult question. We still need to assess what makes a good crypto trader, because it's always been going up. There's been a few kind of little tweaks. How do you spot a good trader? Anyone can make money in a good market. It's when suddenly you hit 2008, or you hit, you know, a China crash, or, you know, the Brazilian president suddenly says, you know, he's been doing something he shouldn't, and the markets drop. That's what makes a good FX trader. People are now looking at options traders who have the kind of DNA that they might want to run a crypto fund. Other than that, we'll time up. So thank you very much for your time, both Felix and Richard. Thank you for coming here and not being down the pub. And if you have any other questions, come and grab us.